Hello, and my apologies for not being able to make it today to the Teachers Environment Network meeting, but I'd really like to thank Moreland City Council and Ceres for hosting and inviting me to the session. My name is Julia Cirillo, and I'm the Waterwatch Coordinator at the Merri Creek Management Committee, and have been since 2016. I've been a Waterwatch Coordinator for 13 years within different regions in Melbourne. I also have a Master of Teaching, but I have yet to jump into the classroom, but I do look forward to it. Currently, I work with Merri Creek Management Committee, as I mentioned, as a Waterwatch Coordinator. And Merri Creek Management Committee, for those that don't know, is a not-for-profit organisation that's been around for 30 years, and we ensure the preservation of natural and cultural heritage and the ecologically sensitive restoration, development and maintenance of the Merri Creek. Merri Creek has a number of different staff. We have about 20 staff, and we do focus a lot on the revegetation of the Merri Creek, but we also do lots of education. You'll see I've got my details there, Julia Cirillo, Waterwatch Coordinator, and my email address there too, and our website as well, which is www.mcmc.org.au. We have lots of online education resources if you look under education. And hopefully you can find some things there that suit you. Though if you have questions of things that you would like to see that would help you in your teaching, please do let me know. Waterwatch Victoria is a statewide program, and we have been celebrating recently our 25 years. And our Waterwatch program is all around Victoria and in different states in Australia, and it's really about stewardship. It's connecting the community to their waterways, and basically Waterwatch is designed to make the community and students more aware of issues surrounding water quality and understand what we can all do to improve the water flowing into our rivers and creeks. The education services that I provide through Waterwatch are free of charge, thanks to the City of Moreland, and that's for all schools in the area. So what does Waterwatch do? We provide waterway health, stormwater education and citizen science activities. So we have a number of citizen science apps that we use. We work with, as I mentioned, early years to tertiary, businesses, community groups and organisations. We also work with council quite heavily, who are a major partner, and have displays and demonstrations for festivals and events. We also have a volunteer program, so I currently coordinate about 50 volunteers, mainly adults, that go out once a month doing water testing along the Merri Creek, the Darebin Creek, Plenty River, also wetlands in the area as well, and one over on the Moonee Ponds Creek catchment. Just some of our statistics from our Merri Creek annual report. Last financial year, Waterwatch in this area saw close to 3,500 students in 141 sessions, and some of them were along the creek. As you can see, that picture there is Antonine College along the Merri Creek in Brunswick East. We were doing some water testing, some turbidity testing, and we also do incursions as well. Our ecological restoration team and our catchment team saw over 6,000 participants last year at 265 events. I just wanted to mention some of the amazing animals that we have in the catchment and that we focus on in a lot of our sessions. So some of them, of course, are frogs, like the common eastern froglet. And then we have some more of the threatened species, such as the growling grass frog. Now, the growling grass frog is pretty amazing. They were actually, we've rediscovered a small population on the Merri Creek in Fawkner, which hadn't been heard for years, and that's been pretty exciting. We also get some of our native species, such as the ricale or local water otter. And then our smaller creatures, our water bugs, such as the damselfly nymph. This is a young baby one that would belong in some of our wetlands and creeks. And this is the adult. This is actually a map of the Port Phillip Bay. This is from the Port Phillip and Western Port River Health Strategy of 2007, and it's actually called an Index of River Condition. And it's giving a general overview of how healthy our rivers and creeks are in Melbourne, on Greater Melbourne. So you can see on the map itself, the red lines, the red squiggly lines are representing our local rivers and creeks, and red means degraded. but in the upper reaches of those lines, you can see the lines are sometimes green and blue, which means that the river health is quite good. And then if you look at the peach or pink colour, that's representing urbanisation, where the suburbs are. And you can see that most of the time, the urban sites, heavily urbanised areas, are linked really closely with the health of our waterways. So that really shows that how our human behaviour is very inextricably linked to how healthy our waterways are. So an analysis showed in 2007 that 25% of rivers and creeks in Melbourne are in good or excellent condition and 75% are in moderate to very poor, and results reflect that land use. And I just want to read you something from the current health of Melbourne's waterways from the Melbourne Water Healthy Waterway Strategy of 2018 to 2028. And in that strategy it reads, community, stakeholders and scientists are telling us that the region's waterways are at a tipping point. Continue as we are, and we risk noticeable and significant decline in waterway condition across the region, threatening the significant economic, social, cultural and environmental values our waterways provide. So it just shows that, as Melburnians, we all need to be aware of what these pressures are on our waterways in order to ensure that our human behaviours do not adversely impact on the catchments. Because as I mentioned, that human behaviour and waterway health are inextricably linked, as you can see there. And it's really important to start education at as early an age as possible. So as I mentioned, in the last 10 years, Merri Creek Management Committee has also been focusing on a lot of the early years areas. And also connecting young people with their waterways. So trying to be outside along rivers and creeks as much as possible. A lot of studies, more recent studies, have shown that the younger people are, and the more time they spend outside at rivers and creeks and in nature, means that they feel that connection and that sense of stewardship, which means that they'll help as they get older. They'll realise how important these waterways are and will want to be involved in protecting them. So teachers and parents are really key in this area. So this map is also from the Melbourne Water Healthy Waterway Strategy 2018 to 2028, and it's a great resource, by the way, that strategy. It's got lots of downloadable maps and diagrams. And I pulled out, to just zoom into where we all are, onto the Merri Creek catchment, and it's just the lower reaches of the Merri Creek, so where the city of Moreland is. And as you can see in the key there, some of the, features to have a look at there, which are quite interesting, is that there are, in the khaki colour, there's a growling grass frog conservation reserve. There's also showing you in the peach areas, the pink colours again, where urbanisation is going to expand. And you can see some little triangles, red and yellow triangles, and the red triangles show where there's fish barriers that will be removed in the next 50 years. So fish barriers are things like weirs and dam walls that create great recreation areas for us, for humans, but they can actually make it very difficult for fish to migrate up and downstream in rivers and creeks. And many of our native fish species, such as the short-finned eel and the Australian grayling, depend on being able to migrate up and down rivers and creeks to breed. So one of those particular weirs is in Coburg Lake. There is a fish ladder there, so that's an area that diverts around the lake to help fish migrate that way, but they do have varying success. Now, I haven't got time to go through all the major threats to the Merri catchments, and there's quite a few there, and they are also the same ones that we get through most of the rivers and creeks in Melbourne. So I'll just list them there, but there's some really good summary and information in the Melbourne Water Healthy Waterway Strategy. So they include pollutants and sediment, pest plants and animals, rapid urbanisation, climate change, modifications and diversions, of which we just talked about the weirs there and fish ladders, intensity of stormwater, and litter. And they're not in any particular order, but they all have a pretty high rate of issues, I suppose, that we need to look at. Okay, so I suppose the previous slide was a little bit sobering, so I wanted to talk about some of the fantastic opportunities and positive things that are happening in the Merri Creek catchment and other rivers and creeks around Melbourne. And this is also from the Melbourne Water Healthy Waterway Strategy. So some of the opportunities and things that have been happening are a really good focus on Aboriginal cultural values, because understanding, protecting and promoting cultural knowledge and facilitating a greater involvement in waterway management helps achieve better outcomes for the environment and our community. I was just today on a webinar with Uncle Dave Wandon and learning about cultural burning and what he's been doing with different teams in the area, and there's a really great Wurundjeri team called Narrated who actually go out and do cultural burning. So it is a fascinating practice and has a lot of connections with ecological burning. Then there are things like environmental qualities that a lot of us are working collaboratively to improve the quality of waterway environments, including the riparian zones, the banks of rivers and creeks, as well as in-stream, which will improve the functioning of ecosystems, and it also underpins cultural, economic and social values as well. Using stormwater as a resource. So instead of stormwater just going quickly into our rivers and creeks after we get a large rainfall event onto our hard surfaces, our car parks, our streets, in our retail areas, the water normally pounds really quickly into our waterways and causes erosion and brings lots of nutrients and litter. Trying to capture some of that stormwater and use it in irrigation, such as on football fields and things, storing it in rain tanks like a lot of us do now, as well as council, and also letting it go into treatment facilities such as rain gardens and wetlands means that it's an excellent potential resource, as well as reducing those effects of the stormwater rushing into creeks really quickly. The other thing I've touched on there is the partnerships and collaboration that a lot of community groups, such as Merri Creek Management Committee and Series, are working closely with council and other stakeholders and residents to actually improve ecological values along different creeks. Merri Creek in particular is a prime example of amazing work, as well as Moonee Ponds Creek. And then, of course, there's the social benefits that waterways provide, those connectedness, naturalness, and a place to exercise, relax, and socialise. And during our current COVID restrictions, I think we're all really seeing the value of those open spaces, having somewhere natural to exercise with excellent infrastructure, and being able to appreciate nature is so important at the moment. And so I think that's going to be a real silver lining coming out of what we're all going through at the moment, is that more and more people are going to value those natural areas, and that we have quite a lot of open space in Melbourne. So engaging in waterway health, it can be really fun, and it's a really positive experience for students being out close to nature in areas that some of them might live quite closely to, so can revisit themselves later. It's a really special thing to do, and here at Merri Creek Management Committee we really focus on that. What can we provide to schools in Moreland? Well, we have a lot of knowledge of where sites are safe, so places you can go along the Merri Creek, the Moonee Ponds Creek and their tributaries that you can take your students. So you might have an area that you are thinking of and you're wanting to know, is that safe and accessible for my students? How long will it take to get there from my school? You might not really have any idea where to start. We have lots of places that we go to regularly. We take school groups and we do regular updates of our site safety assessments to make sure that they are safe and accessible. We also have access to water quality monitoring equipment that's kept up to date and is also quality assured to make sure that it does work properly, that we can come out with to show students how to use, or it can be borrowed for certain times. We provide advice and support on water quality data collection, collation and interpretation. So you go out and do the water testing with the equipment, but what do the results mean, and what do they mean in the longer term? What results has the creek had previously? So looking at historical data and comparing it to what's happening in the present. All of those things are things that we can help with. We have extensive education resources, including worksheets. We use apps. We have a live frog, a local spotted marsh frog that we can take out to groups to show them. And we also have a litter kit, so gloves and bags and litter pickup sticks and things like that. and all in a nice, easy-to-use trolley, so you don't need to source your own things. Within the catchment team, which consists of the catchment education team, which consists of Angela Foley and myself, we have over 30 years combined experience working in catchment education. We also work very closely with our ecological restoration team, who go out and do weeding, spraying, planting, and we've also got a nest box program at the moment where we're monitoring nest boxes. So there's some really great opportunities for your students to be involved with our rangers out on site to actually have a look at what's going on. We also work very closely and have a solid and enduring partnership with the Wurundjeri Tribal Land Council, and have been involved in a number of their activities, and they've been involved in ours, and we do work together as much as we can. Especially my colleague Angela Foley. So that's another great opportunity to be involved in when there's opportunities arising. We also have permission to talk about some things on country, some of the language, so we use some of the language in cultural landscapes as well, and we have permission to do that. I know I don't have much time left, but I did want to really also talk generally about how Waterwatch and our education programs can be actually used as a pedagogy tool within the Victorian curriculum. So what I've done there is I actually have a table of some of the learning areas that we have activities that connect in really nicely with what you're trying to achieve there. So for example, you can see English. One of our activities that we use is called the Stormwater Story, where we look at different pollution in an urban environment that affects our waterways. So it's excellent in a number of learning areas, in particular English, with vocabulary, reading aloud, text development and conveying ideas. And that one works really well from year 1 right up to year 8. Mathematics, we have a number of areas for all year levels really, from year 1 and even foundation up to year 10. So some of the activities that work in really well with mathematics include water testing, because we've got lots of things there that have like units of measurement, for example. Measuring maths in nature, which has things like measuring the velocity of a river, looking at counting different diversity and populations of water bugs, and doing some of the water testing such as turbidity and working out the levels in a tube. So all of those things focus on areas such as numeracy, problem solving and interpreting of data, different data sets. Science, of course, you can imagine within Waterwatch and some of our catchment programs is a huge focus. So some of the activities we have is water bugs or water bugs discovery, looking at live water bugs, wetland food webs, volcano rock and the phosphate game. So biology is a big focus for water bugs and wetland food webs, and for example I use water bugs in year 7 in science around looking at nomenclature and taxonomy and using dichotomous keys. Food webs is a really good one to look at food webs and food chains of a local Indigenous example. Volcano rock talks a lot about the local geological formations of the Merri Creek and the Moonee Ponds Creek catchment, so geology is a big focus. And our phosphate game is testing nutrients, so there's a really big focus on chemistry. Critical and creative thinking. Some of the activities we have include habitat and fauna surveys, which increase knowledge on habitat and different fauna, and apply it to local creek habitat needs. On the final table there, column, you'll see our cross-curriculum priorities that we can address. So one of the major cross-curriculum priorities we can address include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander histories and cultures. So, for example, cultural burning, we talk about, we don't actually do. Weaving, connection to Merri Creek, and Woiwurrung language in the landscape. So we have, as I mentioned, we have permission to talk about different Woiwurrung words or Wewurrung words and how they relate to the landscape. What do and what did Aboriginal people call certain areas and why? And continuing on with some of the learning areas that we can focus on, humanities is a really big area that we can focus on with our activities. So we do things such as catchment tours, which is if you have access to a bus, we can drive from the top of the Merri Creek catchment, for example, and stop at a number of spots along the way till we get to where the creek ends at the Yarra River. So the Merri Creek is over 80 kilometres, and it changes quite a lot through that area. So that can be a really interesting activity, and it focuses on things such as history, geography, civics and citizenship within that. Litter cleanups and stenciling of drains, of stormwater drains, has a really good focus on geography and civic and citizenship as well, looking at where is this water coming from, and why and how have humans decided to do the infrastructure this way, and urbanisation. The arts, we have a really big focus on arts, and my colleague Angela Foley has a really good grounding in arts education and is also an artist. So some of the activities include waterbug discovery. So we look at the live water bugs, but we can also draw them. How do they move? How do they look? Also, we can make them out of recycled materials into models. Frogs, we focus a lot on frogs, and one of the activities with art we do is making dioramas, frog habitat and what frogs need to survive, and make it into a diorama using recycled materials. Indigenous gardens is another one. My colleague Angela goes out to schools and helps them design and plant where they would like particular Indigenous gardens, and students in their class can actually start designing a garden, what they would like to see in their garden, and what animals would they like to attract. So a lot of these different areas focus on visual arts and visual communications design. Technology is another area that a lot of our activities involve. So our litter cleanups, our frog activities and our water testing use a number of different apps and online data portals. Health and physical education is another great vehicle. So a lot of our activities can be done along the creek. So students could perhaps, for example, Pascoe Vale girls for a number of years had done bike rides along the Merri Creek, where I've met the students along different sections of the creek. They've done some water testing or another activity and then continued riding. And of course, a lot of the activities we do involve a lot of walking. There's also, I've had some schools on the Yarra River canoe along certain sections looking at urbanisation and then stopping to do an activity with me on water quality. And the final cross-curriculum priority that we do focus on, of course, is sustainability. So some of the examples, there are many, but some of the examples are Indigenous plants and animals, climate change, water quality and habitat. And this is the final slide of my presentation. I think I also just wanted to ask a question to all of you, is if there's anything stopping you using our programs at Merri Creek Management Committee, I'd really love to know what they are. What are the barriers, and what can we do at Merri Creek Management Committee to help you actually overcome those barriers? And is there anything else I can provide, any links to curriculum and capabilities, learning areas and capabilities? Would that be helpful? Do please let me know. Do contact me on my email address there. I've also put in our link to our activities, so we have a description of all of those activities I mentioned in the previous slides, as well as more, and we can tailor a lot of those to suit what you're trying to achieve with your students at any time. Waterwatch Victoria, which has the data portal and lots of information, is also the website I've included there. And Melbourne Water, on their Waterwatch programs, have lots of resources, and just recently they've put a lot more resources for early years right up to secondary that can be used in and outside the classroom. Another recent resource, probably the last 2 years or so, is River Detectives, which focuses a lot on the water testing. Because we can't do the water testing at the moment, River Detectives are currently looking at and putting online lots of different online resources. So you can actually sign up with them to receive new resources each week. I'd like to just stop there and thank you all. And I hope to see you all on the creeks soon. I did forget to mention too at the start that Merri Creek Management Committee, as I mentioned, work really closely with Wurundjeri Tribal Land Council, and I would like to pay respects to Wurundjeri elders past, present and emerging, and thank them so much for all they do. And I'd like to thank you all very much for listening and watching my presentation, and please do get in touch if there's anything that I can help you with and work with your school in the future. Thank you.